Okay, let's unpack this. We are doing a deep dive today into the 2015 Hatton Garden safe deposit burglary, a crime that, it just grabbed everyone's attention, didn't it?
Oh, it really did. It felt like something pulled straight out of a movie script.
Right.
Except, instead of George Clooney, the crew looked more like, well, a lineup from a particularly determined grandfather's club.
The media absolutely ran with that, didn't they? The age of the gang. They were immediately called the Dad's Army.
They were.
But the sheer audacity of it was just shocking. This wasn't some quick smash and grab. Over the 4-day Easter weekend, they got into a supposedly impenetrable underground vault.
Right in the heart of London's Diamond District. And that success, that penetration, it immediately got it branded the largest burglary in English legal history.
And the initial numbers being thrown around were just astronomical.
Huge. People were talking, panic estimates up to 200 million.
But that was inflated, right? What did the real figures actually settle on?
The confirmed value was, well, it was closer to 14 million at the time.
14 million.
Which, is about 20 million today.
Yeah.
But here's the critical number for you. Only 4.3 million of that was ever recovered.
Wow. So the vast majority of it is just gone.
Still out there.
So the question we really want to explore today is the real story here less about the age of the men and more about the structural forces that made Hatton Garden so uniquely vulnerable?
Exactly.
We want to look past the Dad's Army nickname and really examine how this location became this incubator for organized crime, linking this one heist back to decades of criminal history.
That structural history is absolutely vital. For centuries, Hatton Garden is the UK's #1 hub for high-value commerce. Jewelry, diamonds, gold.
And its whole culture was built on trust, right?
Entirely. There's even a Yiddish term they used, musel brocho, which basically means my word is my bond.
And that trust is the great contradiction here. It sets up the whole problem. The vault they hit was marketed as safe on steroids, but the history tells a very different story. Our sources show an archive of just continuous burglaries and robberies in that small area from 1931 all the way to 1998.
It was a permanent target. But, and this is key, official policing strategies for the whole 20th century treated these as, like, one-off events. They never addressed the fundamental vulnerability of the zone.
They just failed to see it as a chronic crime problem.
They did.
And the people who paid the price in the end were the clients. This vault had 999 boxes.
Yeah.
A lot of them belonged to traders, sure, but so many were just ordinary people, retirees, families, storing things that couldn't be replaced, like the one woman who lost her late mother's uninsured jewelry.
And these clients, they paid a pretty small annual fee, maybe £300, and they didn't have to declare the contents. That discretion, coupled with the low cost, it just fueled this rampant problem of uninsured losses.
Because everyone was just relying on the illusion of safety.
Exactly, an illusion.
Yeah.
So when the worst happened, the financial hit fell squarely on the victims, not on some regulated or insured system.
That reliance on trust and sort of low liability, that takes us right into the bigger story here. The evolution of organized crime in London.
Let's talk about crime displacement.
Right. So in the 70s and 80s, you have this aggressive policing pushing violent criminals. What were they called? Project criminals?
That was the term, yeah.
Yeah.
Large-scale armed robbers. They were being pushed away from high-risk physical jobs.
They need a new game.
They needed a new frontier. And a simple regulatory change created an absolute gold mine. The catalyst was a government loophole that made VAT gold fraud massively profitable.
How significant was this shift? Really?
Oh, enormously significant. The government removed VAT on gold coins like the Krugerrand, but kept a steep 15% VAT on scrap gold.
Okay.
That alone created a machine for complex white-collar fraud that needed zero violence. The gross takings from these schemes, they went over £500 million in 5 years.
Wait, hold on. How does an armed robber suddenly become an expert in a complex accounting scam? How did this back-to-back VA fraud actually work? It sounds incredibly complicated.
It was. It was bureaucratic alchemy, a guaranteed 15% return, basically handed to them by the government.
Wow.
So the basic mechanism was this. Fraudsters set up fake companies, registered for VAT. They'd buy Krugerrands, no VAT because they're coins.
Okay.
Then they'd melt them down. Now it's scrap gold.
Which is subject to the 15% VAT.
Exactly. They'd sell that scrap to a legitimate bullion house who would pay the gold price plus the 15% VAT. The fraudsters collect all that VAT money, make a huge profit, and then just disappear. Liquidate the company before they ever paid the tax back to the government.
It's theft by paperwork.
Purely.
Which means the key skill isn't cracking safes anymore. The key skill is buying legitimacy.
That's it. And this is where that integration between the upper world and the underworld just exploded.
Yeah.
These criminals needed things they didn't have. Bank accounts, business services, clean paperwork.
And Hatton Garden could provide it.
The jewelers, the accountants, the solicitors, the upper world facilitators, they provided that legitimacy. They taught the criminals a whole new set of high-level financial skills. This is where Brian Reeder, one of our future ringleaders, was learning his trade.
So the VAT fraud was basically an MBA program for organized crime.
A very profitable one. It gave them capital, skills, and international contacts. And when the VAT rules were tightened in '82 and that scam dried up, the networks didn't just vanish.
No, they just moved on.
They leveraged everything they'd learned. The capital, the accounting savvy, the smuggling routes, some previously used for conflict diamonds, and they shifted into large-scale drug importation.
And that's what really cemented Hatton Garden's infrastructure, not just as a place to rob, but as a base of operations for crime families like the A-Team. It became a center for criminal logistics.
It went from a jewelry district to an international crime command center.
Which finally brings us full circle, back to 2015, and this crew, the Dad's Army, these are men with that old-school analog pedigree.
Absolutely. Look at the ringleaders. Brian Reeder, the 76-year-old governor. John Collins, 74. Terry Perkins, 67. Daniel Jones, 58.
I mean, Reeder's history alone is incredible. He was involved in laundering the gold from the Brinks Mat robbery in '83.
A huge job. He had decades of experience handling stolen wealth at the highest possible level.
But the truly fascinating element, the one that bridges that analog past with the digital present, was the specialist, the ghost, Michael Seed.
Basil was their technological bridge. He was fundamentally different from the rest of the crew. They came up through Borstal and prison. Basil was the university-educated son of a top biochemist. He had an electronics degree.
He was the one who could defeat the modern alarms.
Precisely. And the planning for this was, well, it was meticulous, not the work of a few old amateurs.
Oh.
It went on for nearly 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah. Daniel Jones started researching industrial drills online back in August 2012. They eventually settled on this diamond-tipped Hilti DD350, an incredibly powerful machine.
The only thing that could do the job.
The only thing. And they held regular meetings, often at the Castle Pub in Islington, just mapping out every single step.
And their entry over that quiet Easter weekend was pure misdirection, posing as workmen. Basil might have even used keys to let them in.
It seems likely. They got in, descended via the lift shaft, and they were hauling just an incredible amount of gear in wheelie bins. The Hilti drill, metal joists, hydraulic rams.
The CCTV footage is just bizarre. You've got these elderly men in high-vis vests, and Brian Reeder, the governor, is wearing these distinctive, brightly colored stripy socks.
Stripy socks under his trousers, and a high-vis jacket that says GAS on the back. It's such a memorable, almost comical detail.
Okay, so let's talk about the execution. Night one, Good Friday, was a dramatic failure. It should have been the end of it.
It should have. They worked for hours, managed to drill the hole through the 50-centimeter reinforced concrete wall, which is an incredible feat in itself. But they were immediately blocked. There was an internal metal cabinet, a second layer of security, bolted to the floor inside. Reeder was so discouraged, he abandoned the job, never came back.
And this is where the Metropolitan Police commit this just massive blunder.
A huge one.
An alarm signal was triggered. The police were notified about a security breach in the Diamond District.
Yes, they had the information, but they failed to send anyone to investigate. That single act of negligence gave the rest of the gang a complete second chance.
Which they seized immediately, night two.
They came back. They brought a new piece of kit, a high-powered pump. They fed it through the hole, used it to power a hydraulic ram, and just smashed the cabinet out of the way.
And then they were in.
They were in. They ransacked 73 boxes, got the loot, and escaped back up the lift shaft in their wheelie bins.
But for all their planning, this analog crew was operating in a digital world. And their old-school mindset led to these fatal, almost comical security flaws.
Oh, they made so many mistakes that were just easy for modern police to track. For instance, Daniel Jones, when he bought that replacement pump, he used his own address and his partner's initial, V. Jones of Park Avenue.
You can't make this stuff up.
You really can't. And John Collins used his personal white Mercedes, complete with a disabled badge, for reconnaissance. It was captured again and again by automatic number plate recognition cameras.
The ANPR. But the final fatal mistake wasn't a technical one, it was their hubris. They thought they were safe meeting up afterwards, discussing the split.
At their usual spots, the Castle Pub, Scotty's Cafe, and this is where the police showed they had adapted. They planted covert audio probes in their cars.
And used lip readers on CCTV footage.
That's right. Jones was recorded bragging about it. He said Perkins had been in the biggest cash robbery in history at the time, and now the biggest Tom jewelry history in the fucking world.
And that was it. That confirmed everything.
It led directly to their arrests in May 2015.
The searches of their homes must have been unbelievable.
Police found cash and jewels just everywhere, tucked under microwaves, behind skirting boards. Daniel Jones hid a massive haul in a cemetery under his partner's father's memorial stone.
And the final insult to their whole operation?
Police found a copy of Forensics for Dummies at one of the houses.
They knew the rules, they just couldn't follow them.
In the end, 8 men were convicted. The ringleaders got between 6 and 7 years. Bezel, the expert, he dodged them until 2018, but got 10 years for his role.
But the real punishment wasn't just prison time. It was the financial side of things. The Proceeds of Crime Act, POCA.
That's where the state really came for them. Confiscation orders were leveraged, demanding they pay back $27.5 million.
Which is vastly more than what was recovered.
Way more. The law just assumes they've got the rest stashed away somewhere.
And the mechanism behind POCA meant this was effectively a life sentence for these old men.
Precisely. Failure to pay meant a mandatory 7-year default sentence, added on top of their existing time. Given their age and health, their own lawyers said it guaranteed they'd die in prison.
And what about the victims in all this?
The Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company was quietly dissolved in December 2018.
So that just made it impossible for the uninsured clients to get anything back.
It seriously complicated any civil claims. For many, it meant they were left with zero recourse.
So when we pull all this together, this whole deep dive, we see Hatton Garden wasn't just a random target. It was, for decades, this training ground for criminal innovation.
Absolutely. It hosted that crucial shift from armed robbery to complex white-collar fraud, and that's what gave this Dad's Army crew the skills and the network they needed to pull off their final huge heist.
The entire job was really the last grand performance of a certain type of analog criminal.
It really was. They proved they could beat 50 centimeters of reinforced concrete, but their downfall was their failure to adapt to modern digital surveillance. They could break the vault, but they couldn't beat ANPR, audio probes, and their own loose lips.
You've seen how this convergence of legitimate commerce, the upper world of Hatton Garden and these criminal networks, allowed sophisticated crime to flourish for decades. The dissolution of the company afterwards, leaving all those uninsured clients with nothing, it raises a really critical question for modern society, one that goes way beyond this one heist.
When the commercial environment itself helps crime happen through lax regulation and this over-reliance on trust, should the liability for these huge unrecovered losses fall only on the victims? Or should regulatory bodies be held accountable for failing to mandate proper security and insurance standards in these high-value zones?
Something to think about.